This is like a 10-year high school reunion. I see faces out here that we were all in the trenches together. And by the way, if anything is ever thought or said that Lex Taylor did something or, it was not. I'm seeing so many faces, so many people, so instrumental in making this happen, so influential. But to sit up here, Governor, and for us to hear the Speaker of the House say, we will defend tort reform and we will defend it to the very day and move forward with it, it is unbelievable. Now just think about it a minute. That was an attorney standing up there saying that. And the guy we were fighting was a businessman. How ironic. It just blows your mind. It tells you about, at the time, kingdoms were being built rather than thinking of the state we live in and the people we serve. That's one of the fundamental differences there, where we are today. But I'm tasked with a few minutes just to tell you about the grassroots effort. I've been scratching, you ought to see my notes here. I've scratched everything through about everything I was going to talk about. The governor said it all. It's been done. It took my words away. But I would say just a few minutes to say this. 15 years ago, roughly, we started seeing, the business community, the medical community, started seeing something. We started seeing just a plethora of mass tort type cases coming into the state of Mississippi. Unbelievable verdicts being either settled, verdicts in a judgment, or settlements made just to avoid a ridiculous verdict in court. We were all very cognizant of the fact that the jobs environment in the state was just treacherous. And we saw this problem stirring in insurance premiums, both in the business and the medical community. I think the governor said it most about all the things that were going on. I don't want to go back over that, but this was starting to be felt. In fact, we're going to hear a lot of statistics today, and there was a problem brewing. And what put the I guess the nail in the coffin were some statistics like in 1999, a first that had happened in this state, there were more practicing attorneys outside the state taking the Mississippi bar than there were graduates of Mississippi universities taking the bar, just to get in on the feed, just to get in on the action. I mean, that right there starts sending a signal of what was happening. So, business associations across the state, medical associations across the state, all had their budgets being burned up, if you will, and resources spent on this problem. They were all lobbying for some type of tort reform in their respective areas. And no traction, nothing happening. So, what did happen was there was sort of a consensus of minds among these respective associations, and got together and redirected their budgets to one association, one effort to spearhead tort reform. And that association was created, Mississippians for Economic Progress. Jerry McBride, who was the chair of MMA at the time, was appointed chairman of the association, and soon after, that torch was passed to me. But I've got to tell you, it was the best time of my life to meet some people in the state of Mississippi that I would never have known otherwise, and call them dear friends today. The leadership and the focus and the goal setting that these people had, it was enormous, and a credit to all in that. I thank them all that I worked with so heavily in the day, and we still meet today. The association is still alive and well, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Let me say this. How was it done? Leaders in the state literally got out of their offices, got out of their regular business habits, and they went to all four corners of the state. And we had meetings, we had press conferences, we met with Rotary, we met with Kiwanis, we met with every civic club that would allow us to have on their program. We went out and told the story, gave the statistics, what was happening, what was transpiring. You had to go see people. You couldn't do it from Jackson and put push cards out there. You had to go visit these respective communities and talk about what was transpiring. And that's literally, there was no secret to it. It was just an effort to go door to door almost, if you will, but community by community with the executive committee and some board levels of the association to meet with these respective communities and talk the talk and present the concept. First off, they had to understand what was transpiring. We got that point across. Then we had to talk about what could be done to solve it. And what could be done to solve it is them calling in, phoning in, emailing, faxing to their legislator asking for a reform, tort reform. Just that general concept. And it worked well. I'll say this process took 2 administrations to where we are today. And during that administration prior to Governor Barber, a half-hearted effort was made to get tort reform. If you will, we had tort reform of 2002, if you remember, Governor. It was a very well-disguised effort, frankly speaking. And I think it was for the fact that the communication was so tight between the medical community and the business community that game plan would have worked for them. And what it was, again, I think I'm speaking to the choir, it was decent concessions to the medical community. If you remember, by and large, it was the concessions that were given to the medical community. Then they back away, they're happy, and then, let the business community try to present their case. That's what transpired. But in fact, the medical community held strong, held tight, came back and said, this is not good enough. Held strong with the business community, and the work was afoot. From 2002 to 2004, it was a doubled effort. Now, during that time, we had a change of administration, and we just heard the passion of that administration and what it never fails in that when you got the man helping you on the other side. And so the grassroots process began really, really working. And you've heard the stories of how it took place in the Capitol, the late nights. As a matter of fact, I remember in 2002 session, it was, I think, the longest special session ever held in our state's history. Fortunately, it didn't take that long, Governor, in the 04 special session. But I'm telling you, at a 30,000-foot view, it was over 1 million push cards sent out. It was over 21,000 posters put in businesses and in stores. I tell you, one of the more effective ones, Doctor, was every family practice had the little push cards set right there in the window, Neely. They were right there, and the patients waiting for the doctor had a chance to just pull the card and read it. You can't imagine how effective that was. There was, my point saying is, and my time is running out, there was no specific game plan other than this. There was very much interested parties in the state of Mississippi to support this. Funding came from all sources in the state of Mississippi. There was very much interested parties outside the state for this. But the difference was that MFEP made it clear to the outside funding that came in support that MFEP, that Mississippians ran the show. Thank you for the funding, but we'll decide how it's funded. We'll decide how we put out the rhetoric. We'll decide how we go to market, if you will, to the legislature and the community. And that centralized focus that is a state of Mississippi problem, it is a state of Mississippi solution. I think that was a key part in how we kept it focused in what we had. So, at the end of the day, the 04 Tort Reform Act was passed. It's never been challenged in our state's legislature since. Never been challenged. Now I will say this. There has been a lot of those legislators that were fighting against it in the day are not in the state's capital now. They're gone. There are a lot of plaintiff injury attorneys that were making a heyday during the time prior to tort reform that are in jail right now, are serving time or have served time. If that doesn't tell you a story in and of itself, that's powerful. But like everyone's saying here, we're talking about what happened 10 years ago and the benefits happened to the state. There's been much. But as Speaker Gunn said, as Governor Barber said, don't think it's over. They are not going to challenge it in the legislature. I just don't see that happening. But they are going to challenge it in the courts. They're trying to find a way. Folks, the people that lost the most out of this, personal injury attorneys, and the game plan they had. The people that gained the most, if this thing is reversed or changed in any way, personal injury attorneys. Let's never lose sight of that. I thank you for the time to be here and speak to you, and I'm looking forward for our panel to come, and we'll start with Brian. Brian Hawkins will come before us, and then after they speak individually, we'll have a chance to ask any questions, so please fill out a card if you have one. Thank you.
Thank you, Lex. I know what you're thinking. Who is this guy from Tupelo, Mississippi that nobody's ever heard of doing up here? Well, I'll tell you. I represent, in a figurative manner, the face of small businesses throughout this whole state, manufacturing, retail, whatever, that were under the deluge of lawsuit abuse. We worried every day, and to a certain extent do today, about having to defend ourselves from some frivolous lawsuit for something that we didn't have any part in. So, at the risk of echoing what a lot of people have already said, I'm going to do it anyway because I feel so strongly about it. It's very important. And I know I'm speaking to people who understand that. About 20 years ago, my wife, Brenda, and I started Hawkeye Industries. Now, I want y'all to know, I know I'm on film here, that I gave credit to my wife, so it gets back to her, okay? So sure, where credit is due. We started a little small company called Hawkeye Industries in Tupelo, Mississippi. And we're a family-owned and operated business that provides precision sheet metal components and assemblies to large manufacturers throughout the state. And I emphasize the word large because small businesses like myself aren't the ones that you read in the papers that are announcing 1,000 jobs or a capital investment of $500 million. We're the ones that depend upon the success of those businesses. I don't make a product. I make parts and components for other people's products, but I do it better than anybody else can. I'm a little bit biased in that regard. Well, before I founded Hawkeye, I spent 14 years in the commercial and industrial lighting industry in Tupelo with a company called Daybright Lighting. And I was there the manager of manufacturing and industrial engineering, and it was there I got firsthand experience in seeing the effects and the costs on a Fortune 500 business in just silly expenses that they would have to incur in non-value added overhead just to keep from getting sued. And where do you think these costs went? They went to the consumer. So it just galls me to think about all of this non-value added costs and mental effort that companies have to go through to defend themselves from these things. Now, small businesses don't have the luxury of having staff attorneys and staff accountants and people that can see these things coming. I mean, we struggle to just keep up with the new rules and regulations that are coming at us every day and worry about the ones we're misinterpreting and can't afford to have these staff attorneys and accountants. So there again, the side of the small business, either be it manufacturing, retail, whatever, is so at the, we just sometimes don't know where to turn. So we represent, and we have representatives that we talk to, and thank goodness in the state of Mississippi we have representatives that listen to not only the big guys with all the big jobs, but the little guys like us too. Well, when I started thinking about this idea of breaking off from the lighting industry and founding my business, don't think that I didn't consider those really, really risky areas of manufacturing, metal manufacturing to be particular, where you just got to watch out or you're going to find yourself being sued. So you start thinking about, well, how can I avert or manage that risk? Well, in my case, I did it with technology. I mean, I'm a capital-intensive company, all of 30 employees, including my wife and 3 sons and 26 others. So you do it with technology. It's not labor-intensive. The less people you have, the less risk of those kinds of personal injuries that you might get yourself caught up in. So that was one of the primary reasons why I started the business in the strategic manner that I did. And as Governor Barber has said, I heard him say it back when he was on the campaign trail, and even later, every small business is just one lawsuit away from going out of business. And in our case, it's not so much getting a judgment, but it's just having to defend yourself for something that you didn't even do. As you spoke about the pharmacist, the same thing, What did she do wrong other than being in the wrong place at the wrong time? Well, personally, I wish Speaker Gunn was here, I would prefer seeing like a lot of other countries around the world do, a system where loser pays. And I vividly recall Governor Barber saying that when he visited one of our MMA conventions. And we were one of the first to say, we're going to back you, Governor, to be elected. And that stuck with me, and it just makes so much sense. Some things make too much sense. It'll never happen. Well, in 2004, in particular, tort reform was absolutely necessary and on the minds of every small business in this state. And thanks to Lex and the grassroots effort that spearheaded this thing, it really was important. And it opened the eyes to a lot of people as to what was really going on. Not just businessmen and large employers, but to everyday Mississippians. They could see that everyday worker could see the effect of what's going on here and how it's impacting them. Our state was labeled a judicial hellhole, which is driving our medical community out of the state. And it made businesses that were considering Mississippi as a place to do business, and these kinds of businesses that small businesses depend upon, they were turning a deaf ear. Lord knows how many businesses didn't even consider Mississippi at the time. We'll never know. Existing businesses like mine were worried about being the next victim of a jackpot jury or just defending ourselves, as I said earlier, and it really curbed our desire, including me, to grow and expand our businesses because we didn't know how many of our customers might leave the state. Good customers, good paying customers. Our health care costs were going up. So, consider today the compounding effect of what was going on with our health care costs before tort reform and the effects of the Affordable Care Act today. Now, that's a scary thought. I mean, I believe we would be, if tort reform had not been passed, I firmly believe that we would be witnessing a deadly death spiral of economic development in this state, and we would be telling a completely different story than what we're telling today, or what we're talking about today. So, as we all know, we've got to keep our vigil. We've got to keep our vigil to protect it. Now, when I was asked to speak on this panel, I immediately went to my community development chairman up in Lee County, David Rumbarger, of which I'm sure most of you know him a lot better than you do me. But I asked David to get me some data from a Lee County standpoint, just Lee County up here in northeast Mississippi, of what's happened since 2004. There have been in Lee County only, there have been 25 successful major economic development projects representing 2,181 new jobs and representing over $269 million in capital investment. Now, that's one county. Not included in that is the group or the joint Pontotoc, Lee, and Union County attracting with the governor's help, Toyota, as well as a lot of others that have been cited here before, and I'm sure more will. Last year, I had the honor of serving as chairman of the Mississippi Manufacturers Association. And our organization and our 2,200 members were concerned in 2004, certainly, and still remain today very concerned about the continuous push by others to subvert everything that was happened, as many people have already spoken about. Now, I consider myself a responsible businessman and a patriot. I don't believe I would be here speaking to you today if I wasn't. I love what I do, and I love where I do it. And I think I could also speak for many small business people throughout the state. So I take responsibility for my and my company's actions, and also my employees, and also for the products and services that we provide. I shudder to think about having to not do that anymore for something that I had no part in. So the runaway verdicts in 2004, the massive tort filings, and the negative impact this was having on my state that I was born and raised in was unacceptable to me as a lifelong Mississippian, as well as our entire MMA membership. We spoke then, and we speak now very loudly and unapologetically about the negative impact that was going on and our resolve to not let it go back. So I applaud the work done by Governor Barber and the entire Mississippi legislature for exhibiting courage in the face of relentless pressure from special interest oppositions. And they took brave steps to reform this negative drag on our state's economy and the well-being of Mississippians. The results of these reforms, obviously, have formed the foundation for Mississippi to move forward and to take its place and be recognized as a global leader in a global economy. And I want to close with a quote that I've been doing an advanced manufacturing camp up in Lee County every year since 2006, where I bring in 13 to 15-year-old students for a week for a day camp. And they get exposed to some of the most unbelievable technology they've ever seen in their lives, and they walk away with a gleam in their eye and a stainless steel clock that they made. And one of the things I tell them, and many people who know me have heard me say it before, is I look them right in the eye and I say, when your memories outnumber your dreams and aspirations, the end is near. So we need to not let the tort reform legislation be a memory. We need to have dreams and aspirations to make it better and to continue to improve it. Thank you.
As you look towards the future, as to what are the things that need to be done next, you've heard a number of speakers today talk about the future of the appeal bond. I think that's something certainly we as a legislature are willing to look at as we progress forward. And there are a lot of other potential policy initiatives that we have kicked around and will continue to kick around within the legislature. But what I want to leave you with is this, in terms of the fight for tort reform in '04, and why I think it's so timely that this 10-year gathering is occurring, is the future is not only the future as it relates to a policy argument, it's also political. Because we in Mississippi do elect our judges, we do elect our legislatures, and as we go into the 2014 and 2015 election cycles, I think it's important and incumbent upon all of us to remember, Governor Barber, as you've heard him say many times, often said that every business in our state was one lawsuit away from bankruptcy. Well, the fact of the matter is, we are, because our margins are relatively narrow within the legislative process and in the judicial branch, we are one bad election cycle away from overturning many of these reforms that have meant so much to the business climate and to the medical malpractice climate in our state. So in conclusion, I would just say we've got to continue to work and remember that elections matter. Elections mattered in 2003 when many of us went to the polls and elected the leadership that we did with Governor Barber to help drive this discussion. And elections matter in the judicial branch as well as in the legislative and executive branch in 2015. And I hope that we are all mindful of that. So finally, Governor Barber, thank you for inviting me to be here today. And thank you for your leadership because if we can continue to be successful in elections and continue to be successful from a policy standpoint, the 2004 tort reform will forever be remembered as the foundation for creating that environment which encourages the private sector to invest capital and create jobs in our state. Thank you.